Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Metal Gear Rising Revengeance Foxalive run. This is the final mission of the game, the 7th mission, and it starts off with a stealth sequence that leads into another stealth sequence if you can do it, but it's quite difficult to do. And I mean, this one's quite difficult as well because I just triggered a fight, but I wanted the footage to be as exciting as I could make it, so alas, we're going to have a bit of fighting as well. And it must be said, the checkpoint coming up in that hangar is not very good. So again, if you've only seen this video and you want to do this challenge, the restrictions are in the description, and one of the areas that will make it a lot more fun for you if you don't like certain aspects of the game, including its checkpoints, is that you have complete control to segment certain fights if you want to. As long as you're honest about it, I think it's okay. And the fight coming up here, guys, in the warehouse, I'm going to segment because I wanted to have a ton of fighting and you have to clear a ton of enemies. So what it ended up being is I do a fight at the start, I sneak through the warehouse, I do a fight afterwards, and I wanted the gameplay to be as interesting as possible, and I couldn't do the fight in the warehouse against all of them because they kept firing rockets at me. So instead I ended up skipping it. But when you skip it, you don't get a checkpoint, and thus it leads to the checkpoint issue. But this first fight here, if you wait for the gliders to fly away, they will not contest you here, and you will fight a sword cyborg with a hammer cyborg. And this combination of enemies is really dangerous, but really fun. And I kind of wish there was a bit more of this, actually, because I like this. The 3 Hammer Bros is like the lamest thing in the world, but this changes things a lot. And if you get lucky here, you can use these parries to hurt the hammer guy, but it's really tricky to do so because he's very passive sometimes and he's very slow. The only person slower than him is Mistral when you need her to be fast. But that's the end of the sword cyborg, and now we can 1v1 the hammer bro. There aren't many encounters on this level. I really wish that encounters that were here weren't so kind of haphazardly dumped. Because when you go inside that hangar and it's just a bunch of fucking dudes with rocket launchers, like 30 dudes. 30 dudes with rocket launchers and they're elites, and it's just like, what were they thinking? I'd rather fight a Metal Gear Ray or something, you know? I'd rather fight 2 Rays at once than fight that room full of dudes with rockets. And it's unfortunate that the end of the game has to sour you so much because the bosses coming up, casually, are very good. On this run, they're not that good, but that's not the game's fault. That's more so the restrictions making them a bit more tedious than they need to be. But you're in for it if you've not done it before, because Excelsus is not a difficult fight, but he's long. He's unbearably long. And one of my skill sets in games is not marathon, you know. I am a sprinter, my skill set is speed. Anything that's endurance, I just tap out, so fighting Excelsus for like 10 minutes was definitely a test of my patience. And then Armstrong does take a long time to die, but luckily you can manipulate him into doing those QTEs that do a lot of damage. And if you can survive to their thresholds, and you get lucky, you can kill Armstrong quite quickly. The first 2 phases you have to fight, and if you don't know what you're doing, those 2 phases will kick your ass, but they're not too bad. The only bad part is the second one, because the second one, the longer you fight him, the longer the fight goes, so it's much quicker to be passive. And I just don't like doing that, you know, and I did try my hardest to do one where I wasn't avoiding him. And I think that there might be some editing magic there, guys, because I have 2 fights of the Armstrong phase number 2. One of them is where I avoid him for like, I think it's like 3 minutes and it triggers the cutscene. One of them, I fight him for 5 minutes, get his HP down to an absurd amount, and it never triggers the cutscene. So I think what I might do on this run, I edited it a while ago, so I might not have done this. This might be just behind the scenes. I think you might see the long one, and instead of it ending in me eventually getting hit, it'll just end in when I hit him, it triggers the cutscene, and it looks like it's part of the game. But again, transparency, integrity, honesty. My successful run, I ran away from him, and it's boring. And if you want to see that, I think you can see that in a video I made on my YouTube. It's called I Carve My Own Path, and it's the original successful fight against Armstrong. Whereas in this walkthrough, because I didn't want to put the same footage up twice, I got a bit more creative with the segment and a bit more creative with the editing. And hopefully you'll enjoy it because you get to see something a bit different. But I had Armstrong in my pocket because I know that fight really well. And then he cheated me with an instant dash kick, which he can do. If you've never seen it, it's really bad. He cancels all startup, which is actually fair, and he turns it into the least fair move in the game. I want to know if it's a bug too, because there's a lot of bosses in this game that have these moves that have big startups, and every so often they can just do them for free. And I can't quite figure out whether or not that's just a problem with the engine or like a rare anomaly, or if that's something they wanted. Like every so often there's like a 2% chance it's got no startup or something. Because I think if that was designed, it could be quite interesting. I don't think it's fair, but it would be interesting, you know? Having a rare move every so often, like a rare reload in a battlefield. I think that's cool. The part where the player loses and it feels unnecessary is less cool, but from a purely artistic perspective, it's really interesting. But do you know what's not interesting? Oh... They really liked this monster, didn't they? They're like, let's just make him really durable, and give him a hammer, and then we'll make him really slow, and that's it. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. And do you know how I'd fix this enemy? I'd make it so that when you go behind him, you get all the properties you normally get off of like a big stun. You know, like on Yakuza 3, where when you go behind bosses, they can't auto-correct out of your combos, and you can do a full combo and they can't dodge. And then you can bound them, and then you can do all kinds of like corner carry and wall carry and OTGs and stuff. That's cool. This game needed a bit of that. But this right here is my inclusion of something interesting. You might look at that and think that that looks like a pointless use of the run, but I think it's really interesting because it comes from the no-roll stuff in the Souls series. I like coming back to games I used to play a certain way and playing them a different way, and because I've done all these things, like back in 2013? Back at the start of 2013, I was not the player I am now. And I've played so many things in that nearly 10 years. So many action games, so many challenge runs, so many really difficult projects. So when I come back to this game, I don't look at it the same. It's really empowering. But here is Excelsus. This is a really tough fight, because it's really long and some of the hitboxes are absurd. And you need to misdirect a lot on this, guys. And it's the same with like two of his moves, like this one right here. If you walk one direction and then you go that direction, then you go back against it, you'll dodge this. But the final move, I think, on this, when it comes down, you have to slide. You have to do a Y attack at the end of it, or you don't get enough range to get away from it sometimes. I think it's this one here. Misdirect and then slide, see that? You have to run the wrong direction, then run the right direction, and then do a slide. If you don't, you just get absolutely dumpstered. And then he does it again. So misdirect, come the other way. This one you don't need to slide, you're okay. And then after this, he'll do what he wants. And this fight is essentially a very basic pattern that you have to get creative to dodge. And because you do no damage, you have to dodge it multiple times more than you usually do, because on a standard run, you would have already killed him. And then when he transitions phases, he goes into a different pattern. And there's two patterns to learn here. There's the phase with the blades, and there's the phase with the feet. The blade phase is the easiest. The feet one is just awkward, because when he sweeps the foot, it can be hard to tell if it's in the foreground or if it's in the background, so it becomes kind of like a mix-up, which I don't like, because you shouldn't have problems judging depth. I just don't think that's how it should work. But it's how it does, and I failed a lot on it. And then when you get him to a certain amount of life, you chop his leg, and then it transitions to the second part of the fight, and then on that second part of the fight there are adds. And what happens there is, he'll summon the geckos. When you kill the geckos, he will then do one of two things. He will either do the sword stuff, or he'll do the foot stuff that he's doing right now. And then he'll summon more geckos, and if you get a good pattern, he gives you the pattern you can do a lot of damage to, and if you get a bad one, you just kind of have to do a million geckos. But the idea here is, this is that move I don't like that's quite ambiguous. That right there. It can be hard to tell what area it's on. The reason I could tell then is because it was following where I was, and I was close to it, so it told me that if I went far away I would be okay. But there's a loop on this, and you run away from it, like I did just then, and then you slide back down on it, and then you run away from it, and you slide back down, and you can keep getting it to do this. This right here, I'm not that comfortable with it because I've only just kind of remembered it or rediscovered it or whatever was going on. But all you do is you run away, he slams it, and then you slide kick it. And it's really safe. The one area of Excelsus where you're going to have problems is when he puts his foot down and lets you beat up on it. He does this kind of like cheeky raise and stomp and it hurts. And I really don't agree with it. So you want to get your combo in and then you want to run away. You're going to see it, I think, in a moment. So here's his sweep. I tried to misdirect that and I nearly got hit. Don't go near this when it comes down as well. You can't block this shit. It goes through everything. But if you watch here... Here's a slam, back to his pattern. And there's the break, so now we can transition. You get a cutscene here, and then you get a nice checkpoint. The first part's not too bad. The second part's just boring, because you spend so much time kiting bloody geckos. It's enough to drive you insane. But we cut the limbs. I love this fight as well. I think this is probably the third best Metal Gear for me. And I talked about this on my stream, this idea that I think after Metal Gear X and Metal Gear Ray, they kind of lost their way of designing robots, and this is the one I like the most afterwards. And it's not even in an official game, really. But you can do a lot of damage to him when he bends over there, and then once this happens, it's going to go into the second phase of the fight. I got my music off on the game at this moment, so I had to put music on this. And now there's two geckos, so the lasers here will kill both of the geckos if you do what I did just then. It's just all about positioning. And then when they die, he's going to do his lasers again, and then more geckos will probably jump on. And then again, I'm going to bait the geckos, and I'm going to bait the laser, and then both the geckos will die, and now the gecko phase is over, and now the RNG will begin after this laser. So if he gives you the good one, oh no, there's more, sorry, it goes on for even longer, bloody hell. And did I mention, you can do like 5 of these gecko phases in this fight? That's how long this can last. So now he's going to come close, and what does he do? Is he going to use his feet? Is he going to use his hands? What do we get? It's a surprise. He's using the blades. Again, you have to misdirect this and then slide. But that one you're okay with. I think it's the final one where he does the other one. That's the cross cut, so you can run between it. You can also jump over that if you're creative. And then he's going to do the combo here, the 1-2, 1-2. So, left. Then he does the right. And you can get some interesting hits here. And he does the left again. Then he does the right again. And then the ender, when he uses 2 blades, you have to misdirect and slide. This one will hit you no matter what you do if you don't slide. Always slide. I think I dodged it once without sliding, and it was a bloody miracle. And it's a good job there's no enemies in here either, because if there were, you'd lock onto them and you'd be in trouble. But this one you can misdirect. That one's okay. But this is where this challenge run really starts to bite back. Your lack of damage makes everything last way too long. And I know it seems silly for me to say that considering it's my challenge and what did I expect, but I honestly forgot just how much damage the parries do for you, you know? And when you get to fights where parrying isn't a component, you really realise that this game, it needed a bit more, you know? And it has lots of cool stuff, but I can't use any of it. And it goes back to that idea I talked about in the previous video, bare bones balance. Like, there should have been something in here that we could have done that really evened the playing field, because a toolset should reward a good player who's confident and skillful in using it. It shouldn't reward a player that has more money and purchased stronger versions of things, you know? Like, there's nothing wrong with rewarding the player that wants to pay their way to success. There's nothing wrong with the player that wants to grind and get to level 600 to win. But you need to make it so that a person who wants to engage with your game and wants to push it can also find success in situations no one anticipated. And in this game, when you can parry, you're okay. Like, look at the gecko as an example of this. The gecko does that move where he stamps his foot in the ground, and as long as you have a full blade bar, you press one button and then you kill him instantly. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is immaculate balance. You don't need to buy something to do that. All you need to do is know that he does that and bait it. And the reason it works is because he doesn't do it that much, you know, and all the other stuff he does is quite dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. If you can survive being near a gecko long enough for him to stamp his foot, it's a reward. Where is the equivalent of that with Excelsus? Instead, we're sat here now for 10 minutes watching me do the same thing. And thankfully the music is kicking ass, but other than that, I had a really, really hard time doing this because I found it so frustrating. And it just stems from my absolute inability to understand why developers make anything have so much HP. And that's why I like Ninja Gaiden. You know, I don't play Ninja Gaiden that often, and I don't like do it on YouTube or on Twitch. But it will never ever leave my mind, because in that game, you kill the bosses so quickly and they kill you so quickly. And it's the same with the enemies, and you don't even need the upgrades either. Even if you go in there with low level weapons, you still hit for chunks. And there's no game that does it like that. Ninja Gaiden did something that people are either unwilling to imitate or too afraid to. This is scary as well. So I didn't kill the geckos in order, so now Excelsus and the geckos are going to attack me. Fortunately, Excelsus is really good at killing the geckos because his moves are in insane range. So they both died just then. But that could have got really bad, that. But it's definitely an ordeal. It's definitely a test of your patience and your perseverance. And again, guys, if you have to segment this in any way, I don't really know how you would, but I've got a few ideas. I completely support it because it's not fun. But I hope we get to see the thing I mentioned. I think it's coming up here. So I'm going to attack his leg, and he does like this cheeky little raisin stomp. Oh no, he's doing the swing. So see that it went wide. See that? That's wide. I don't know why that didn't hit me. I got so lucky. Oh, you love it, right? You gotta love it. That's the power of that slide, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. That slide is so good. But do you see how ambiguous it is? It's really hard to tell what this machine is doing, and I almost lost a run to that. Fortunately, for whatever reason, that slide saved my ass. And it's interesting as well, because there's certain moments in this game where you think you'll get hit and you don't, and then there's other moments where you think you shouldn't get hit and you do. Right, we're going to see it here. So you'll watch me, I'll do a few hits. Oh no, we got the transition. This is the end of the fight, this. Yay, that's the end of Excelsus, and we get to do the cool cutscene, which everyone's looking forward to. Single-handedly the greatest moment in the game for me. And it's just because we get to wield a 40-foot sword and chop a robot up. How many times do you get to say that? I love how clutch that slide was, though. Talk about, like, coming out there by the skin of your teeth. There we go, pick up the big boy. Swing him around, mash the buttons, listen to the cool music, see all the electricity. Now we get to prep for the final phase in the fight, which is, of course, Armstrong. And Armstrong's interesting because he's probably one of the easiest bosses in the game. But if you knew, he's a nightmare. And it's always interesting when you can say that. Because usually, a boss is hard regardless of your experience with it, you know? It's like, this is a tough boss because he's tough. But in this game, the toughest bosses are always the ones that are relative to where the player is in their ability. Like, when you get to Monsoon, if you don't know how to parry, you get bodied, because he's just going to do that. When you get to Blade Wolf, dude, the amount of comments I get from new players to this day who cannot deal with Blade Wolf because they don't know how to parry is a testament to how badly designed the parry is, basically. Because these poor players, they're just not able to do it, you know? The tutorial doesn't do a great job. There's a million videos on YouTube that try and help, but they're not going to help you completely. It's got to click, and if it doesn't click, you don't understand. So you try and play and you get your ass beat because it's a really mean game. But here's Armstrong, and I'm going to show you an absolute clinic on how to use movement to avoid this boss. And I mentioned it earlier on in the series, which is really funny, but there was a comment on YouTube that called me scrubby for doing this. And it still amuses me. It really does. Because the person who left it, if you didn't see it, guys, went on to say that they're better than I am at this game, they're better than I am at Ninja Gaiden, and they're better than I am at Devil May Cry. So this person in the comment who was being very, shall we say, rude. Thinks he's better than me at every action game. And you know what's really funny, guys? You know when I checked his channel, I couldn't find any videos. It's funny that, isn't it? Notice that? It's kind of like an epidemic, that. These people that talk shit on the internet and have nothing to back it up. Isn't it funny, that? But I love this fight. It's really interesting. And you'll notice that I'm dodging his golden grab by moving around it. If you try to do that in the third phase of this fight, you'll get hit. But here we go. This is easily one of the coolest fights in the game because you get to use the movement of the punching and kicks. The problem is just how long it takes you to recover. Like, you take 200 years to recover from these moves. And the idea here, guys, is the best thing to do is to go into the corner of this arena, wait for him to dash at you and jump over him, and then go to the other corner, wait for him to dash at you and jump over him. It's really easy to do, and it's really effective, and this will be done in 3 minutes. But if you want to fight, you'll be here a while. Because you do no goddamn damage, and he has total priority here. And there's a mod on PC that lets you use this moveset, but I don't know why anybody would. Because other than the animations looking cool, it's fucking useless. It's really weak. I don't know if the mod makes it stronger, but do you really want to do like 0.01% damage to people? And I understand some people really like endurance fights. There's a guy on YouTube that fought the Demon Princes in the Dark Souls 3 DLC for about 15 hours. And I'm not joking when I say that. He used like a broken weapon on New Game Plus 7 at level 1, and it literally took him 15 hours. I don't understand that type of player. I love that they exist because I think it's fascinating. But that is not my skill set. That is so outside of my comfort zone. There are no zones left, there is only misery. And more power to that player that they're able to do that. But to me, that sounds like fucking dude. I think I'd rather go to the dentist with 50 root canals on the docket than that. Because I don't enjoy it. And that's what makes challenge runners so interesting, because everyone enjoys something else. And if you're the kind of guy that likes a good endurance fight, does it get much better than a 15-hour gauntlet against a really well-designed boss? I don't know. Think how good that guy is at fighting that fight after spending that kind of time. Because that's one of those things you don't realise, you know, the more you fight something, the longer you spend on it. You don't notice just how much you're improving until, you know, you see something else or you see somebody else do it. And you watch someone else and you realise, hang on a second, I've really got this down, I really understand what's going on here. And now imagine doing it for 15 hours. You know, that's the fight. That's not like fails and practices. That's actually the fight. You know, I don't know how many times he failed. Maybe he failed even longer. Maybe it took weeks. Just imagine the kind of mastery and the kind of perception you get from doing that. That's next level, that. Really interesting. My one criticism, though, of this encounter is that you can't really do anything to the gold stuff. I wish there was a button that you could press that did like a knee or did some kind of guard break that broke every armored attack. You know in Street Fighter 4 when people do focus attacks and you have special moves that have armor breaker status and it breaks that glass and it stops it? That's the kind of thing I'd love to see in a game like this. Like when he starts doing that charge, I want to go, oh, it's the charge, and I want to shut it down. And I want to hit him with a counter button. And I think he should go down for a few seconds on like one knee and let me beat him up or something. Or can you imagine if it gave you a QTE and you could do some, you know, some Kenshiro, some Hokuto no Shinken or something? But instead, we just have to watch him do it and then run away from it. Or iframe it if you're using iframes. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the end of the second phase. If you want to see a different version of that fight, please check out my I Carve My Own Path video. It's on my channel, it'll be easy to find. I made it like a week ago, 2 weeks ago or something. And now we have the awesome QTE as we beat the shit out of Armstrong. And he just doesn't care because I have it under good authority that nanomachines, son. Armstrong is a beast though, isn't he? Look at him. Can you imagine if this guy got elected? You know how we've got like the former reformed Rabbi Bill Clinton getting shouted out at the Game Awards? Can you imagine if we're on a timeline where instead of that happening, we've got Armstrong as president, and the dude's just been like, I'll make America great again. Nano machines, son. Steel body from Fist of the North Star, turning all black iron and everything. That's so cool. I wonder if that's a reference to Kickboxer. It might not be. There's probably an older reference with the 2 punches like that. And here we go, guys. The finale of the Fox Die run. 1v1 Armstrong Phase 3. And we get Sam's sword by default here. So not only do we have way better damage now, but we also have more range. And more range is a big thing, guys. It's a real big thing. And this fight's really, really cool. But again, with no upgrades, you have to hit him a lot. And it's a bit boring if you're not a big fan of endurance. But the idea here is quite cool. I've got some good manipulations for you guys that could help you out. The first manipulation is going to happen when he does his combo. So the whole point of this fight right here is to constantly keep flinching him by keeping pressure up. Here's a QTE right here. Be careful attacking these because you can make him interrupt and you won't get it. And you want this. And you want this one as well. This is the best QTE to get because it does a nuclear amount of damage. This is by far the strongest choice. So definitely try and get that one. The QTEs are random. There's no consistency to it. And depending on when it does it, depends on the damage it does, because sometimes he gets this weird grace period where you don't do full damage to him. Sam was the same, and here's the heal. So traditionally, to stop the heal, you go into blade mode and you cut it, but you can also stop the heal by kicking it. But the detection's kind of awkward, and when you do this, if you miss, he counters. So all I'm doing here, guys, is I'm positioning myself to hit him with the Y, and I'm hoping I get it, and I got it just then. He did heal a little bit, but it's not the end of the world because this is already a long fight and I'm already set in for the winter. So we're going to get a launch on this sometimes, and then he's going to come out of it, and he's going to jump up and he's going to start throwing things. 10 years ago, it seemed like no one had a solution to this cut because it was very difficult. And on my walkthrough that I made, I showed people a different way. And I don't think I was the first to think to do this, but it was the first on YouTube that I could find. And if you run underneath it when he throws it, you do not have to do the minigame. But there's a little bit of a caveat here. He's going to do this 3 times in a row, so you have to be really careful on your movement or he's going to hit you. So if you run off to the side and then you start running towards, you will delay just long enough so that he doesn't track perfectly down and throw it correctly and hurt you. So all you do, run to the right a little bit, and then as soon as it begins, run towards it. You can see it in my movement, guys. It's the same every time. Run to the right and then run forward. And because of that slight misdirection, it won't hit you. And now Armstrong's back, and this is a QTE. That's why I stood still. Get a little bit of damage on him before he knocks us away. And this is the bad QTE, but it's still good because it's better than your pitiful damage. So kick his ribs, boom. Take a decent chunk off, and then when we get up, we're moving into the final phase. I haven't been able to show you any of my manipulations because I've been having a really good Armstrong. But if we see them, I'll tell them. And if not, they'll be a secret. So get your sword back. And here we go. Music starts. And then what does he do? So right there's a manipulation, guys. Whenever Armstrong has his back to you, and this is one too here. So watch this. After this combo, he's always going to do this slam right like that, and you can interrupt it. But he didn't do what I wanted there. There's the grab. Run away from it. And then watch. Wait for him to turn his head, then attack. If you do this, he will not do the instant grab on you. That manipulation right there means he will always eat a full combo instead of just immediately trying to grab you. Watch him. See how he turned his head? And now he's eating all the hits, and now he's doing this. He did that because I wasn't too aggressive and I didn't trigger that counter he has. It's the best way to stay safe. And then we got boom, big hit. And then he always does the kick. I interrupted him though, so you didn't see it. And then he does the charge. I don't think I can break this, and because it's ambiguous as which one he's doing, I'm not going to punish it. Never overextend on the firewall because you'll kick yourself into damage. And here's the big hit. After this, he's going to do a QTE, which I get really lucky there. But there was a... I can't show you any of the manipulations. It's unfortunate. Maybe you already know. But the idea is, guys, after a certain move, if you're close to him, he grabs almost every time. And if you walk away from him, he'll charge a move instead of grabbing, and it's near consistent. And it's one of the best things I discovered while banging my head against this fight, and it's really helpful, but you didn't see me use it at all because he gave me a perfect pattern. And all we need to do now is finish him off. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen, the end of my Fox Die run. Thank you so much for watching. Godspeed to anybody that tries this. And most importantly, you take care now.
Looking down on the cars on the highway.